Learn the most advanced recruiting techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with Rick Girard.
Founders need to build a cultural foundation before they build a product. Building the right team is more important than building a team. So we're going to start with today's episode with a quote. Alone we can do so little. Together we can do much. Any idea who said that, Melinda?
I don't know.
Helen Keller. You knew.
I did. You did give me a hint.
I give you a heads up.
You did.
I'm Rick Girard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. Our mission is to disrupt recruiting. We share insights from top-performing entrepreneurs and industry experts and provide proven tactical solutions to solve your company's toughest hiring challenges. Today, our guest is Melinda Kim. Melinda is the co-founder and executive director of PEOPLESPACE. PEOPLESPACE is actually here in Irvine, and it's an incubator and workspace. She's also a proven executive/entrepreneur who facilitates collaboration, innovation between developers, business entrepreneurs from around the world. Aside from her responsibilities with PEOPLESPACE, she's also a startup weekend facilitator at NASA, Space Apps Lead. That's pretty impressive. All right, and she also specializes in statistics-driven product analysis, business strategy, growth, community, and social impact. Melinda, welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show today.
Wow, thank you so much. You do that so much better than I do.
You know what? I don't. I just have good writers.
That's great. Wow, can I steal that?
Absolutely. I'll send you a copy.
That bio sounds great. I love it.
I took it from your LinkedIn bio.
Awesome.
You already wrote it.
I know, I did. I forgot all about it. I'm like, wow, I did do all those things.
Well, you could. I'll pre-record it for you, and then you can just put it on your website, and you'll be good to go.
Perfect.
All right.
I love it.
So today we're talking about teams, which seems to be the theme of the month here. So we're going to go over a few things. Since you have experience at the founder and ground level of working with incubators, we're going to talk about the importance of taking the time to select the right team. Talking about some of the challenges that you see with some of the companies that you've helped to get off the ground, and how to set the right foundation for building that team. So let's start with challenges. I mean, what do you see? Talk to us about what you see at the incubator.
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges that we always hear is finding the right person to co-found a company with, or even just finding the right talent to be a good fit for your startup.
Or
because a startup, it's you're only between 2 to 4 people. So every single person counts. Every single person that comes on board, and they all have to do everything.
Yeah.
So if you have the wrong person, it's easily spread. If it's poison, it's spread to 4 people very, very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
So having the right person from the start is just so detrimental
to the
team. Yeah, so I think that it really is a biggest challenge. So that there's a lot of different meetups and groups, like Co-Founders Lab. There's a lot of those groups that want to facilitate finding the right person. But sometimes I just really think it's just like marriage. It's just like dating. You just have to be out there. You have to look for that person, or it's probably somebody that you've known for a really long time, right in front of your face, and you don't know it. So I strongly feel that it's very much like that. Going out there and finding a co-founder is tough.
Yeah. Now, how many companies have you seen come through the door at your company?
Over the last 5 years we've been here, at least 300.
Wow.
Yeah, between startup projects to barely coming on board, and then we also had not just our incubator, but we had different incubators coming through and talking to different startups. So we've seen quite a bit walking through our door, anywhere from year 1 to year 3.
Now, have you seen anybody come through and you said, "There's no way these guys are going to make it"? That's a terrible team.
You don't
have to say who.
And you know what? Yes, and really, it's never about the idea.
Yeah.
It really is actually about the team. and you look at the people or their values, and you say, wow, that, either they're going to run that company to the ground early on, and I've seen that even with bigger companies, knowing early on, some of the values that the company's held, and really, within 2 to 3 years, the company either like folded or is in just big trouble.
So what would you say would be the most common reason why those people don't mesh? They're trying to solve a problem, they're trying to work together, but like, what's been the biggest problem with the teams you've seen come through?
I think it is a cultural fit and a value fit. So
okay,
and sometimes so I can only sometimes speak for myself, just from my own knowledge too. I mean, I do see a lot of teams that come through, and I
you can be nice, and I'll throw people under the bus.
I really try not to, Rick. Being very politically correct here.
I will do it.
But for me, it was more like when I do have a partner or a co-founder. Sometimes our characters are different, or like our values are different, or how we build product is very different. And so then just like a marriage too, again, I'm going to go back to that. Yeah. It's how you come through those diversity and how you actually solve problems. If you, as a team, cannot solve problems, then that is that's detrimental.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
If there are disagreements and you can't find that common ground, or you can't agree. So let's say like you have a bunch of money and you're going to make a decision on either to do something to take that, or if it's against the value of a company to actually do that particular transaction, and the founders disagree. It's like, well, that's a lot of money, we should do that. Or and the other one's like, well, that's never what we're about, right? That's huge.
Yeah.
And those are the values that sets the tone for the company. If you value money first, then the other team members will also see that. It's like, oh, they can offer this even though it was not what we're about, but they're going to do it. Then they're going to know like, oh, they're valuing money first right now.
And that's the biggest problem that I've seen with a lot of startups, is that just take it down to the values. They don't have their values even written down, or they don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they don't sit down to think about, okay, look at our value is going to be this, 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 and this, and this is how we're going to build the company. Those conversations never happen.
They don't.
And those are so important. They're probably more important than let's get the money.
Or the product, right? So when you're first building, I get it. Just to get that product off the ground is like climbing Mount Everest, right? Just to even get that thing up and running, just to even get people to use it. And then now you're thinking about how do we going to grow it, or even just getting one to even like it or to pay for it. Those are huge problems as it is.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to like, do I really get along with you? No. Can we just get this product to work?
But you don't have to get along that well, because you can have conflicting personalities. I mean, there's a lot of good things that come out of conflict.
Yes.
It's just how you deal with that conflict.
Yes. And in fact, I feel like you should work with people who have very different views than you, and people who are smarter than you. But at the same time, it's kind of like, how do you guys go about solving those differences? Or, and I think it comes down to, just like marriage, it's respect. It's knowing that, hey, you know what, we might not like certain things by each other, but we have to get there. And so I respect you enough that, you're on our team. We know you can get it done. You can get shit done. So let's just do this. So
I like it. You dropped the shit bomb.
The shit bomb.
Before me.
You know what? I asked you.
I know. I'm kidding.
If I could say bad words.
No, you're spot on. So getting shit done. But okay, so then let's back it up, because when you bring companies in, right? And this is something that I've kind of talked to some companies and helped them out with, because I don't deal at your level. A lot of them just don't think to, and when you talk to them about it, they look like rabbits or like deer in a headlight. So like that. You need to define what your what your culture is. I know you're trying to get product out, but you guys need to figure out who you are first.
Yes.
Because if you don't have a map of where you're looking to go, how are you going to get there? You're going to burn yourself out getting there, that's for sure.
Yeah. I think those conversations come as needed, just like anything else, right? So like you build a product, everything's going great, and then it's going to start to expand. It's like, oh, we should add one more person. Now that might be the time to say, okay, if we're going to add this, who is it going to be? Then that conversation kind of comes about. I think it does come in time, but knowing the timing to have those conversations is really important.
Well, that next person that you add, when you decide to do that, you need to be very strategic about it too, because that's another personality you're putting in the mesh.
Yes.
And when the biggest mistake that I see companies do is they hire for skills.
Yes.
So they'll find somebody who brings whatever skills they need, as opposed to somebody who brings transferable skills, but who fits better culturally.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Or, you can make the mistake that I've done. It's like, anyone with that skill set will do right now.
I've done that too.
If you like what we're about, then you're in.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're just so excited that they're excited, and we're like, we're gonna make this work.
Yeah, and it doesn't. It doesn't too often.
And that was from a personal experience, yeah.
Well, it's funny. Predictive Index, I have a friend who does work for Predictive Index, and they say that only 3 to 7% of just random hires like that aren't screened work out. Like, so you have such a low percentage of possibility that person's going to work out. It's scary. Right?
It is so scary.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's like dating. What is the percentage?
Well, you went to marriage first. Now you're going to dating. All right.
Well, that process is dating. Who you end up with is like a marriage.
That's true.
So
both ways.
It is.
All right. So let's talk about how we structure the company, because I think that's really important for companies. So, again, you have this issue where you've got people coming in, they're trying to get work done, they're trying to get their... At what stage do you advise them, hey, look, maybe you guys should back up a little bit and think about what your culture is and how we build this out?
Definitely early on. Definitely early on with the co-founders of the company, like the core of the company. I think as you sort of incorporate, so I always advise founders to like not incorporate until they actually sort of have something.
Got it.
Or even like when you sort of plan on having revenue, just because sometimes, as entrepreneurs, we change our ideas so quickly that if you're just to two of you, no need to incorporate. If you weren't going to plan to like get investment for another at least 6 to 9 months or so, you have a little bit of a runway.
But then you have a whole different set of problems later on down the road when you do incorporate or you set up the structure, right?
Right. So when you do incorporate, that's when you have a little bit more things in place, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully, and that's when you're going to have like your core team members in place, your advisors in place, maybe some couple of your board members in place, and then that will be a great time, to talk about everything, whether it's transparency, it's equity, it's how or just mission, vision, and values. It's just having those conversations of like, okay, what is it that we really value? What is it that we want to build? What type of structure do we want it? Do we want it to be more hierarchical, or do we want a much more flat structure? Do we want it to be more a democratic environment, or do we want something that we're really just needs to be a boss, And there's no right or wrong, actually. It really depends on the it actually depends on the product, and then also depends on the founder. Yeah,
and it's very dependent upon the people that you have in there, because every culture is like a unique little snowflake, right?
Right.
They're all going to be different, and some of them might be a total dictatorship, and some of them might be a total democracy.
Right.
But if they work, they work.
Right.
So, but I think taking it back though, the conversation needs to be had early on. How do we solve problems?
Yes.
How are we going to figure this out?
Big time, yeah.
So, moving it forward, then, do you have these conversations when you bring people in? Okay, hey, how do you solve problems? How do you guys work together? I mean,
so we definitely do an observation first, and we do a lot of call it like the Roundrobin brainstorming, which is more like doing exercises out in the open in transparency, which is it could be anywhere from like the mission, vision, values, or the business model canvas, but doing that out in the open so that we all see what our ideas about this company actually is, and then we all talk about it.
Got it.
Right, so that and sometimes, and then how you end up to be in agreement, or like, well, they're like, oh, I thought our vision for 5 years is going to be this. And then, and the other founder's like, no, we were talking about that. And we really thought, we were going to go this way. So very early on, I think those discussions and how you actually arrive to a decision, that's the part that is in the dynamics of the group, I think.
Do you have startups that actually plan 5 years out? Because you really can't do that.
No.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It's more like the vision, right? It's
Yeah.
like, I'm going to like conquer the world. I'm going to have this pair of shoes fly to the moon and back. That's the vision in 5 years.
All right.
Right.
All right, if you're just joining us on the live stream and podcast, you're listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. I'm your host, Rick Girard, and today our guest is Melinda Kim, the co-founder and executive director of PeopleSpace. So we just talked a little bit about the actual problems, and now we're gonna let's give our audience a little bit of some framework as to how to establish and build your mission, vision, values, and how do you advise?
Yeah, so I touched on it a little bit earlier. So I do feel like transparency is key.
Sure.
And also having that transparency in a constructive way is key, because we can all be blunt and rude, but we don't want to do that and to hurt people's feelings, but to also be transparent and also have compassion and respect and all those things, right? So in an actual framework, just like I would say, is putting out these what used to be leadership exercises, like in the mission, vision, values, or even writing your company's mission. Yeah. Right. Like that could be in a founders activity or group activity where everybody writes it down and then they all share it to each other. I did something like just creating that type of everybody's heard culture. Yeah. I think it's really just that alone. I think it's really important, and having the founders sometimes hear those things too, I think is really helpful. It's like thinking like, gosh, I thought I was so clear. So many times, do you feel like sometimes you say something and you thought you were so clear, and someone comes back and said, more than one person would come back and said, no, you said that, you didn't say this, but in your mind, you're like, no, I was so clear that I said...
That happens to me all the time.
This, right? Yeah. So I think that it's really good for leadership to also hear what they are hearing. So I think having that kind of communication exercises are really, really, really good. And I do feel that those things should just not happen like once a year or once every 5 years. It really should be like an operational system where like you continually do these things to kind of check back with your co-founders and your employees.
So you're looping it back around to communication. I mean, you really have to have daily communication. But even if you're a company that's been funded, let's say you're 100 people, right? Right. That's still, and there's a lot of 100 people companies out there that don't have a mission, like they don't know what their core values are or what their culture is.
It's not scary.
That's terrifying to me. Yeah. Doesn't that scare you?
Very scary.
Yeah, but there's probably thousands of them just in a 10-mile radius of here, right?
And they're working, so what am I talking about, right?
Yeah, and they're probably doing well. I mean, they do have a culture, but it's probably not very stated, and it's probably more of a job environment as opposed to something that's going to be able to flourish.
So, in the startup culture, I deal with a lot of startups also overseas, and the biggest thing I always come back to communication is because culture is also ingrained into how we speak. Yeah. And then it also affects innovation. So if you can't ask the questions back, if you can't give feedback, if you are not allowed to do those things, then innovation stops.
It stifles, yeah.
Yes. So that's why I feel like certain companies might do really, really great up to a certain point, but once those things stop, being able to get feedback or stop listening to your employees, to your customers, to whoever it may be, then I think that's when that company stops innovating. So they may generate income, they may generate revenue from whatever product or things that they are doing, but I'm not sure if they are setting up themselves to be innovators.
Yeah, and that's always scary to me when I talk to companies and they talk to me about like, well, we're just maintaining right now. Like that's the death word,
Yeah, it is.
right?
Right. How long are you going to maintain
Yeah.
until you realize somebody's just doing what you're doing, but so much better,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, there's always a better mousetrap being
Yeah.
built. And then what ends up happening is you have to buy that better mousetrap.
Yeah.
Which for
Yeah.
some companies it makes sense. If you're Google, sure, let everybody else innovate,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Saves you a lot of money.
Exactly.
Um,
It works for them.
yeah. But, if you're a smaller company, you've got to have something key in place.
Agreed.
All right, so you and I talked a little bit on the phone prior to the show, and you were talking about a business model canvas.
Yeah.
Want to run me through that?
Sure. So a business model canvas, you can actually pull that template up. It's I use it for everything. I use it for like training for a startup weekend. I use it for anytime we have a new company coming through. I've used it for just general, if there are any confusions in product or even brainstorming for products, I use it.
Yeah.
So it's an exercise that can quickly tell you about the value of your product, distribution channel, who you think your customers are. So
it's more product driven.
It's definitely very product driven.
Okay.
But I think in a startup, that's really important. It's part of that open communication, where you're...
So it's a communication tool to it as well? Okay.
I use everything as a communication tool.
Got it.
I think that's where I'm coming at.
At least you hope you do.
At least I hope I do. Right. So, I mean, yes, you can just have the CEO or the founder of the company do the business canvas, which is fine too. So they know everything, right? They know like who is supposed to be using this product or who they think is supposed to be using this product. But as a startup, we're always guessing. We're always guessing like, okay, we're going to build this thing and we think these are the main issues for this that we're solving. Sometimes you think you know, but you don't really know, right? So you kind of list all these like hypotheses, and that's the business model canvas gives you that sort of evolving hypothesis and learnings, and then and it will show you sort of like how your product evolves through that canvas.
Got it. So what if there's not alignment? What if you've got founders or core team and they're just not gelling, but you've got a great product, which I've seen many times in my career as well.
Yeah.
When you don't have that communication, how do you fix it?
Yeah. So usually I want to say, I hate saying this, but it's like usually it's like that one guy or the one girl or that one person, right?
Yeah.
You're like, why aren't you listening to me? I thought, or
And that one person, by the way, in a small company is death to your company.
Detriment, yes.
I've got a client right now that I know, and they've got a key person in their company that is totally toxic to the rest of the company culture. And now they've got a bad reputation for a terrible company culture.
Yeah, and I do go back to the leadership of that team, or that whoever the CEO, whoever has quote unquote the highest rank, even though we want to go into very like flat structure. But I do believe that that's why you reevaluate these sort of mission, vision, and values, because you can make decisions out of your values and out of your mission. Yeah. So if it aligns with the values and the mission, we can not take it so personally. We're like, look, we're building this product because we're about the people. But if we do this, it's going to be about the money and not about the people. Yeah. So
it's so hard for companies to get away from the money.
Yeah, it's so hard.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I know.
But I guess if you realize that, hey, look if I pull the money equation out of this and I have just a great company that I'm building, the money will come. Although investors don't probably look at it that way.
No, but I think you do have to understand like how much impact is it going to give when you make those kinds of decisions and to see like, well, what is your company about? Are you going to take this money then, or are you going to take that money, or what is the cost?
Yeah, and that's a whole different
money? Right. So that's a whole different.
Yeah, who do you take money from is very important too.
Yes. Yeah. So those are all the really hard conversations, right? So I think in a startup you can't have those really, really, really hard conversations out in the open and be able to agree to make decisions in a certain way. So like, hey, we're going to make decisions based on our values, no matter what. Or we're going to make decisions based on money, no matter what. Because right now, we just need to live. Right now, our company just needs to survive. Or, hey, if we take this, whatever that decision is, if there is no alignment, I do feel like that it is up to the leadership team to be leaders, and I can't. There's no other way around it. But someone just needs to coach that person or to set them aside and be like, hey, hey, look, this is what we're really going after. Or this is what we're about, and that's where the fit comes into.
Yeah.
Like if you don't feel like this is something that is right for you, then they really should reconsider like what kind of company they're working for.
And as leaders, you have to develop the muscles. You have to develop that ability to have strong EQ, to be able to take the punches and roll with it, to be open to criticism from the people who are working from you. Yeah. That's a hard thing to do a lot of times.
Very hard.
Yeah.
It's a lot of egos in place.
Oh, tons of egos in place.
Lots.
Especially when you're pre-revenue.
Yes.
And then it goes to like, the far end of the spectrum if you, for some reason, become $1 billion company, right? Uber. Anyway.
Well, right.
All right. So lay out for me, do you have any suggestions that you would run through with a startup on how they should actually build their team or how they should hire?
So I can just say sort of what I've observed.
Okay.
Right? So I do see, especially very technical oriented teams, they tend to go product first.
Yeah.
And making sure the product
Well,
works.
you have to.
Yes.
You have to at that level.
At that level,
Yeah.
right. And then it goes into more into the hiring or adding team members. And I think that's when conversations should really start into the structure of the company or what kind of culture are we really about. And even when you do hire the next, second or third employee or co-founders, how do you want to make decisions? Is it going to be like very democratic? Is this so sort of setting up the baseline for how you want to you feel like at that moment, and it's all going to change.
Well, it's making sure you communicate that to everybody as well, and you set expectations. I think that's the other piece where I think a lot of companies fail is that they don't really define out or set the expectations properly with people that they bring on board.
Yeah. So I think the answer would be just the earlier the better. Any of those conversations, if we can get that out in the open, I do feel like sometimes it's painful. It's kind of like having, what do you call that? Like agreement before you marry.
Prenuptial
the
agreement?
prenups, having those conversations are never fun, but sometimes you're like, hey, that helps set sort of the expectations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just planning for the worst.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think you need to have this done. I'm a huge believer that it needs to be done before you make your first hire. Mm-hmm. You need to have all these things in place because you might bring in somebody who you got queued up who might be, good to fit from a, the technological perspective, or they've got the skills that you think that you need, but that one person's going to affect at least 2 to 3 other people.
Yeah.
Right? So, and then I say hire slowly and fire quickly.
Yes.
If somebody's not working out within a reasonable amount of time, 30 days, Yeah. It's just like dating. You go out on that first date, I'm gonna throw your dating reference out there. Yeah, you go out on a first date, you're pretty confident that like I'm done with this guy or girl or whoever, right?
But then you're like, but he's really rich.
That's funny. I just watched Crazy Rich Asians over the weekend.
Oh my gosh, it was such a funny movie. That was hilarious.
So, all right. So takeaways.
Yeah.
What would you say would be the best advice that you can give to startups in setting up, and building their team?
So definitely have those conversations early. Second is advice is really no advice. To be honest, every team is so different.
Yeah.
Where it comes to founder, product fit, to founder, to product to the company fit. Like some document companies are really huge into documents.
Yeah.
So they document everything that is part of the culture, that is part of the basis, right? Because it's part of the product.
Yeah.
So things like that. So there's no right way. That's the hard part. There is no like, yes, you should do this or you should do that. But again, I just feel like communication is key. Having the right values not just for when we set the vision value, the values for the mission vision values, we set it. The values is all the way across, not just internally but externally.
Yeah.
So let's say like if we're about honesty and integrity, that means we're also the same, not only internally but also with our customers and our clients and our vendors.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of create that sort of culture. That is how we treat everybody and not just the four of us in the room. So,
not me. I'm a total dictator.
I know.
I'm just kidding.
And now that I'm talking to you more and more, I'm starting to feel
Yeah, you're not the first
I'm
one.
having the wrong conversations.
All right, so I'm going to say culture first. You hire for culture first. I mean, that's really the most important thing. But more importantly, know what your culture is. Transparency, like you mentioned earlier, is key. When you hide things, people don't get the right information.
Yeah.
They make bad decisions.
Right.
And when people make bad decisions, then it's just that downhill. Now everybody starts playing the blame game.
And I do have another tip.
Sure.
The best companies that I've seen that has worked are usually companies that have worked with people they've worked with before.
Yeah.
And or co-founders, or they've been friends with forever. Or like maybe 10, 15 years, or like I've known them since college, or he's gotten me jobs and I've gotten him jobs.
Because they've been through the dirt together.
They've been through that dirt. They've
Yeah.
been through that disagreement. They know each other's values already.
They've had some fights.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. So for the few companies that do make it, as we know is very few, they have been friends for a really long time.
Yeah.
And or they have worked together prior, but up to like 10 to 15 years prior. So,
well, then that would just bring in like another point, which would be, hey, make sure that you go after referrals and people that you know, because that's usually your strongest pool of talent.
I guess when you're 20, you should hire somebody that you've known since you were 5.
Exactly. All right. Well, we're just about out of time for today's show. Melinda, thanks for your time investment today. And I want to welcome you to the Higher Power Radio community.
Thank you for having me. This has been so much fun.
Absolutely. Now, I'm sure that some of our listeners are going to want to find out more about you. How do they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn under Melinda Kim. I'm also on Facebook. I think it's melinda.kim.
Spell that out.
MELINDA .KIM.
Awesome.
Yes.
And then how do they find PeopleSpace?
PeopleSpace is peoplespace.us. So yeah, not .com. So it's PeopleSpace, PeopleSpace.us.
Perfect.
And if you just go under contact us, info@peoplespace.us, you'll get to me.
Awesome.
Or you can just call the number. You'll get to me too. Not that hard.
There you go. You want to play a little hard to get.
I'm pretty sus. I should put some like answering service.
All right. I want to thank our listening audience for tuning into this week's episode of Higher Power. A quick thanks to our team, our engineer, Paul Roberts, our producers, Andrea Ballin, Shanti Ryle, and Kim Iverson. If you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review our show. Your input is welcome and needed to improve the content for you. You can join the Higher Power Radio community at hirepowerradio.com. And you can find us by searching Higher Power Radio on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, and YouTube. You can also follow me if you want. I'm pretty exciting. On Twitter, it's Rick_Gerard. Tune in next week. Our guest is going to be Daryl Gurney. He's the Chief Empowerment Officer for Career Guy. I'm your host, Rick Gerard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power with Rick Gerard on OC Talk Radio.
Awesome. Good job.
Thank you.